Hi, and welcome to the October edition of the Twinsburg Mayor's Report. As you can see, Kathy Prokop is not joining us this month. Originally, we planned to have Dave over, and now he's got to be thrown into the fire and last a little bit longer because she's busy with some personal business. I thank you for filling in for her.
I'm glad to be here.
Welcome to
Thank you.
Small station here. Dave Maestros has been the law director for quite some time in the city of Twinsburg, and what we had hoped to do this show is to go through the issue items that will be appearing on the ballot in the city of Twinsburg for the November 4th election, and have Dave kind of explain what each one of these is to the voters so they have a better understanding of what they're voting on, and we'll get to that. But first, before we do that, Dave, since I've got you here finally, can we go into a little bit of background of how long you've been in Twinsburg, what exactly you do there, your job responsibilities? Can you give us a broad overview?
Sure, be glad to. I started with Twinsburg under former Mayor Karabek in 1998, hired as the prosecutor at that time, and I served in that role since 1998, and then at probably about 2002, 2003, I also started representing the Planning Commission, attending those meetings as the prosecutor. And then in 2006, I became the law director and served in the capacity of the law director and the prosecutor until about a year ago when the city hired another prosecutor to handle those duties in court. So since that time, I've been the law director.
Now, I got to think the fact that you've done this 16 years, there's something about Twinsburg, because a lot of people, I was there for a year or two and moved on. What is it that keeps you here and changing the little responsibilities that you've had along the way?
Sure, it's a great opportunity. First of all, I mean, when I came here as served as a prosecutor, I was a law director in a small village just south of Cleveland, up in Cuyahoga County. And I served as their law director for a period of years, and when an opportunity came to come to Twinsburg as their law director, I jumped at it, and I resigned from that other position because Twinsburg has some things, and the residents, I have to laugh, sometimes the residents, talk about things, and I have a sense that sometimes they don't really realize what they have here.
Right.
It's a great community. The fact that we have the golf course, the fitness center, the indoor pool, the outdoor pool, all the things that we have in this city, it's rare. And to have an opportunity to play a role in many of those was rewarding for myself.
How did you hear about this position in the first place? Was it something that you read in one of your journals, law journals?
Well, originally in 1998, when the prosecutor's position became open, it became open someone as an emergency. The former prosecutor had died of a heart attack, so they needed somebody to fill in immediately with some experience, and I filled in probably as a temporary replacement, and then that temporary replacement turned into staying on as the prosecutor, and then when the opening happened in the law director, I certainly wanted to stay on with Mayor Prokop, who offered me that position at that time.
It seems, and just at least on the surface, we don't see what goes on behind the scenes, but you seem to have a very good rapport with Kathy, who's been here. God, her and I go way back, at least 16 years, I think, along with the rest of the council. I mean, it's got to be very rewarding that because you've been there when they've not gotten all along, but
Sure.
But it's got to be pretty good now with the fact that it seems like everyone is broad-minded enough that they may not agree on everything, but at least everyone talks it out and compromises.
No question. I think I often joke my first council meeting I attended as law director. I think we went till about 12:30 a.m. and I wasn't quite sure what I got into. And in our council that we have now, I think truly recognizes that stability is what's working for the city of Twinsburg. I mean, the stability that we had from the transfer from Mayor Karabek to Kathy Prokop, who has been there through her entire tenure as mayor, and the stability of the department heads and council, who I think recognizes that. It's a much easier job when we're all pulling the same end.
And I don't want to get you in trouble here. You kind of touched on it. I'm always amazed when you can have as many Cleveland magazines that pick you as one of the top, if not the top community to live in, but one of the top 5, and you have all these different publications that name that there's still negative naysayers out there that want to complain and mope about something that's going on. Is it hard? Is that a small fraction, do you think, of the people that do live in Twinsburg? And usually, if they are the small faction, you just hear them more often because they're more vocal.
Right. I think it is. I think it's a small group, and then with social media over the last several years, that small group has a louder voice, I believe, and that's become more of a, I don't want to say a distraction, because for the most part, I don't object to the discourse. It's when it gets to be so negative and counterproductive that it becomes difficult to deal with.
And I think this council and mayor have proven that they'll listen, but things do move forward and generally the way they wanted to move.
Right, and I think one of the unfair shots that some people are taking at this council is that they are just followers of the mayor, and I think that really is the farthest thing from the truth. I think this council really debates these issues, and I think we've seen that. But
Bob McDermott's still there, right?
Bob McDermott's still there, absolutely.
He a lot of times doesn't agree with what they say.
No, and Bob's not shy to voice his opinion.
Neither does Bill. So, I mean, I can think of examples off the top of my head.
No
but
question.
they work together now.
They do.
Versus being counterproductive. And since that job role changed for you, that like you were talking about have you noticed that gives you much more time to do the work in the city that you want to be doing? Was that taken away from some of your time before?
It does. What happened, with the prosecutor's end of it, City of Twinsburg is one of 16 jurisdictions that goes to Stowe Municipal Court. So we have roughly 10 to 12% of the caseload down there, which would put me down there probably a day and a half a week, which meant a day and a half that I wasn't in my office at the city. So having that time back has been extremely valuable to what I can get done for the city.
How exciting has it been for you? You've seen so many changes, as far as both up here and down here, as far as Chrysler leaving, that sort of thing. To be in the middle of the mix of seeing the rebirth of that area and the growth as just generally in Twinsburg, how exciting has that been to be right there with it when this is all happened?
Well, not only is it exciting, it's really remarkable of what has happened there. Because you can go to Michigan, you can go to Gary, Indiana, you can go to these other cities and see the vacant, dilapidated stamping plants that have been there for 10, 15, 20 years and have not been revived. And I believe that within a year after Chrysler closing its doors, there was a buyer for that. And here we are less than 4 or 5 years later, and the construction that's going on down there, it's amazing.
And for the naysayers that say these council people don't do anything in that was a real trying time as far as in the 2008 area and so on, as far as putting something on the ballot to hopefully the residents' support and get us through this time and that sort of thing. There was a lot of work done to make sure that Chrysler plant leaving did not decimate this city.
No question, and it all plays into those things that I talked about earlier, the golf course and the fitness center and the trash pickup and all those things that the residents expect in the city. We were able to maintain those, and I think a lot of it comes down to Mayor Prokop and council asking the residents to trust us, pass this tax increase, and in 4 years we'll repeal it. And council did exactly that.
What they said they would.
They did exactly what they said they were going to do, but it put Kathy Prokop and Larry Finch under the gun to get Chrysler moving, and they did it. And it's really incredible how quickly that came around. And
are you amazed when you drive by there now, like I am? Because it went from it was there forever to gone, and then it was like, when are they going to get this kind? Now you drive by, it's amazing what the kind of work that's been done to get that out of there and get ready for FedEx.
No question. What you're going to see probably in the next 6 to 12 months is now buildings going up and roadways going in and lights, and it's really an incredible boon for the city. And I think the things that Mayor Prokop did. I mean, I remember when that happened. It was the next day that Chrysler announced she was on the phone with Washington and doing these things to get it done and going. And like I said, Larry Finch and Amy Moore, city engineer, I mean, they deserve a lot of credit. And those are the people that work behind the scenes to get that done.
When you go and you do because when you leave your office and you go to regional type events with different law directors and that, do people come up to you and inquire as to how does Twinsburg do that and that sort of thing? They have a very good reputation outside the immediate area, I would assume.
No question. No question. I mean, one of the proudest things I would ever have is when I'm down in court and the judges will ask, and just say, how is it done? And I think the judges hit on a lot of it. The ones I talked to say, it's the stability, because we see, whether it's the civil lawsuits or the prosecution come through their courts, and they're always seeing a different law director every time. And every mayoral administration, you're getting a new person, and they start over, and they start from scratch, or they have new department heads, new economic development director. And the stability in Twinsburg, I think, is what allows us to do that.
That gets you to move forward versus restarting everything.
You're never stopping and starting. We just keep moving, and it's a great advantage we have, I think, on some of these other communities.
Okay. Well, before we get to these again, because we're going to go down and look at meetings, but I want to ask you about, and believe me, the city of Twinsburg does not win every lawsuit that's brought against it.
No.
So let me talk about a couple that are floating out there right now. One is the old school, and I know it's gone back and forth with a group that wants it to stay in the city's position and so on. Where are we in that? Are you waiting for a decision? What happens? Tell us, is there a judge looking at this? Where are we in that fight right now?
Sure. One of the important things to keep in mind on that piece of litigation is that was an appeal. That was an appeal of the decision of the administrative agencies of the city. They appealed it to the Court of Common Pleas. So even though it's not in the Court of Appeals, it is an appeal. It's an appeal of the BZA's decision and council's confirmation of that. So what happens is it gets briefed. Both sides, myself briefed it on behalf of the city, and counsel for the old school committee briefed it on behalf of them.
Okay.
And it's before the judge down at Summit County.
Which I believe is Tom Parker.
That's
right?
correct.
Do you have, they move their own pace, but do you have any idea ballpark when you would hear something?
I don't.
This year,
it's
the end of this year?
Hopefully. It's always hard to say. I mean, the most recent one we've had that was submitted on briefs, it took exactly a year from the last brief being filed to the court decision.
So it doesn't move any quicker just because it's an appeal on a decision already. It may take just as long to come up with that.
Yes, I think that's fair. I mean, right now the judge has all the tools or all the briefs he needs to make his decision, whatever that.
And I know Kathy has mentioned this too. If they wanted to, they could go in and tear that down right now. They're not. The city is not moving full force and taking it. Going to do that. They're probably going to wait everything out, and why not? Because you don't want to step on too many toes. So
right. And what the issue was that was appealed was that the board, the BZA, made a determination. The city asked for a certificate of appropriateness, which in layman's terms is simply asking the board,
right to demolish the building.
Is this building one that can be demolished? Meaning, is it not historic? Does it not meet the certain credentials that should be preserved?
Right.
And it doesn't mean shall we demolish it. That's the next step.
Okay.
The city at that point would have to file a demolition permit, which would explain how they would go about it.
Right.
The city hasn't taken that step yet.
So we're taking baby steps to make sure all the T's are crossed, that sort of thing.
Correct. Okay. And I would like to point out that initially the BZA, which was within their right, denied that certificate of appropriateness and negotiated with the city and was able to bargain some things.
That's right, because it did change.
And ultimately they granted it based upon some of the conditions the city ultimately agreed to as far as preservation.
Okay. One other one I want to ask about, and there's a resident who likes to take the city to court, or has done it many times. She has won recently on... Can you explain to us about the building heights? And I think this tied into the Chrysler area as far as there's something in the charter that originally said it only can be X amount of feet high. Or
sure.
And I'm assuming the city's appealing, or have they made? Are we even that far yet? Because I know this was recent.
Yeah, and here's what happened. As through the process, and you're correct with the Chrysler site, when we recognized that came open, as the city was fielding interested developers or people that would come into that site, found out that many of the new industrial standards, they would want buildings in excess of our 35-foot limit.
For machinery that's actually in there that is a lot taller than what you grant.
The machinery and what we found were these inside cranes. They wanted to have the cranes that were inside the building that could move things throughout the building, similar to what Chrysler had. And as we saw that, we had a limit of 35 feet on building heights in industrial districts. So Larry Finch did some research, and what he proposed was to amend that limit to 45 feet.
Okay.
And we weren't proposing to amend the uses that could take place in industrial districts. Just whatever those uses already were, now they can be in a building 45 feet. And the reality of it was that the prior code said it's 35 feet. However, you can go higher provided you meet certain conditions. So buildings could be higher than 35. We just simply capped it at 45. That was challenged because the city did not put that on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And we talk about winning or losing lawsuits. Sometimes you just need an independent observer to take a look at your charter, if it would, or your ordinance, and say, here's what I think, and that's what happened there.
Okay. Is
that the judge looked at that, and the city's position was always only if you're going to change the zoning designation from commercial to industrial or something like that.
Or should you have to go to the public?
Should you have to go to the ballot, or if you're going to change the uses, whether it's permitted or prohibited, should you have to go to the public? And we agree with that all those should go to the ballot, because if you buy a piece of property, you want to know your neighbor what they can build on.
Right, or is it going to put a Yeah,
exactly.
whatever.
You know, are they going to put a tannery next to you or
Yeah,
something?
right.
So that's fair, and that should go on the ballot. When we looked at this and said, well, we're not changing the uses, we're just changing how high those uses can take place in industrial districts only. We didn't feel that that was a charter issue that should go on the ballot, so we didn't do it. And that was challenged, and the judge ruled that the building height was fundamental to zoning and it should have gone to the ballot.
Okay.
So where the city sits right now is we have one of three options, I guess. We can appeal that decision, and that appeal time's coming up. We can choose to put it on the ballot at the next election in May, or we can simply disregard the 45-foot height, let it revert back to the 35-foot height, and operate under those standards.
I got to think all three will be in consideration because originally you were thinking like Chrysler and those like sort of things. Well, with FedEx and that, I don't think they need those requirements.
No, not necessarily, but you never know. You really limit yourself on what can go in there.
Right. And there's enough land there that someone may be interested in that.
Yeah, and the city is certainly encouraging uses in there other than warehouse.
You kind of tiptoed. What kind of window do you have as far as deciding whether you want to?
There's a 30-day period of
days?
time to
Okay.
appeal.
So this is another thing council will be doing?
It's coming up shortly. Within the next couple of weeks, we'll make that decision.
Okay. That's all I have for you until we get to these. So let's take our break. We'll look at the meetings for the month of October in Twinsburg, and Dave and I will be right back. Respected Dave Maestros, Law Director of Twinsburg, is with me today, and now he's going to give you Twinsburg 101 as far as layman's terms for a lot of what you'll see. A lot of times you go to the ballot and you're voting on things that you don't understand the verbiage or the language, that sort of thing. So hopefully you can help people out as I take you through these, and underneath the screen we'll put the issue number, and then you can explain it. So there are how many issues coming up?
We have 9 issues.
9 issues that are these charter changes? Is that
These are all 9 of these are proposed charter changes. Yes.
From a commission made up of some very impressive members. So let's mention that before we get into it.
Yes, great point. And just briefly, every 5 years, the charter provides that we'll have a charter review commission sit. They can decide to make changes to any provision of the charter or none, and they go through it item by item. And these members, and I did bring a list so I don't miss anybody: Dave Albright, Doug Duttweiler, Twyla Jones, Jay Magnus, Dean Martin, Kimberly Monticino, Drew Ramito, Jenny Spira, and Russ Sipin, who is the chairman.
And there's a lot of work involved with doing this, going through this.
Tremendous amount of work. I mean, people don't understand. I mean, many people haven't read the charter, and many in this group hadn't read the charter. And when we first got them together in January, they all got a copy of the charter, which is only 20-something pages long, but contains a lot of information, very important information. And I should mention Gary Cerasi was the council rep on this. So they review the charter and they discuss among the 9 of them whether or not they think any changes need to be made. Some department heads would make suggestions. The administration might make suggestions, but they
and a lot of times
decide.
things change just because of the times changing as far as names of positions, and a lot of things sometimes are house cleaning items,
Right.
but a lot of times there's some important things on there also.
No question. I mean, I mention to people all the time, the charter was, I think, originally adopted in the 50s.
Right.
So from the 50s till now, there was no contemplation that you could put notice of meetings on the internet, for example. I mean, there's obviously that
Right.
that was never addressed, and it said only in newspapers. And,
Yeah.
and these are the things that the Charter Review Commission wanted to look at.
And again, these aren't political buddies, that sort of thing. A lot of these are just residents who have taken interest, and it's not like they're getting paid to do this
No,
either. So-
they're all residents. They all spent a great deal of time, not only at the meetings themselves, which were 2-hour-long meetings, but in between meetings of doing their own research. They looked at other cities' charters. They did a great job of informing themselves.
I'm always impressed that people, and it's not exciting work either. That's the other thing. You're not coming in to decide on building a new ballpark or something. It has to be done But it's very important that it is done by these people.
No question. And they did a great job, and ultimately they came to council when they decided on these 9 issues and made the presentation themselves at a council meeting.
And then that is forward to the Summit County Board of Elections, which is what we're getting into right now. So let's start with the first of these 9, issue number 35, section 3.01 of Article 3 of the Charter. And this is regarding council, the numbers and terms. Can you explain what this means?
Certainly. What we found with this section is that it did not designate a specific date that a new council member would start. It talked about the first regular meeting in December of each year after the election. And the problem that this created with mainly the Board of Elections is the Board of Elections would call and say, well, City of Twinsburg, we don't know when the swearing-in date and the term will begin and end.
They're all different.
They're all different, whenever the first meeting in December is held. So the Board of Elections asked us to address this with our charter review, so they designated, instead of on the first meeting in December, it's on December 1st.
Okay.
And they recognize that might be a Sunday, but on that Sunday, they'll bring all the new council members in,
which
and
I
they'll
think
get sworn in.
okay. At other cities, I think they've done that.
They do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
So that was really just a house cleaning
Okay.
measure of making sure it's the first day, and then...
But still, very important.
Very important.
And you want that month to get them up to speed anyhow.
Correct.
All right, let's go to issue number 36, which is section 4.04 of Article 4. I got to do my Roman numerals here. Regarding the vacancy in the office of mayor. So what does this mean?
What this means is that we looked at it and said, okay, if there is a vacancy in the mayor's role, whether it's by resignation, this is other than the mayor just deciding I'm not going to run anymore and somebody else winning an election. This is an interim vacancy.
Okay.
How is that vacancy filled? And our charter wasn't very clear on that, because it provided that the council president shall accede to the role of mayor, but what if the council president said no? Our charter didn't address that and didn't address how it would be filled. So this was simply before the situation arises and before we have to scramble around and figure it out. Let's address it, and that's what this is. It provides for council president, if he or she declines, vice president, and then a mechanism for council to then elect one of their own.
So you don't run into that. I mean, we've already seen it happen in Aurora where the mayor could not continue because of a health reason, but it went to the council president, but one of you said, no, I don't know if Aurora is there, but this covers you up.
Yeah, our prior charter did not cover it if the council president. And what you see a lot of times are the council members have full-time jobs and they simply wouldn't be able to do it. So it was a realistic possibility that we wanted to clean up.
Okay. Issue 37, Section 4.05A of Article 4. This is regarding powers of the mayor.
And what the commission did, which again goes to their intelligence, they were going to make 2 amendments to 4.05 in Section A and in Section B. And instead of putting it on one charter amendment, they broke it up into 2 in case the voters decided to pass one and not pass the other. So that's what you'll see in 37 and 38. So 38 specifically deals with designating the mayor as the safety director. It's addressed in the code, but not in the charter. The mayor is the safety director pursuant to the code and the Ohio Revised Code, but it wasn't specifically set forth.
So this sounds like a house cleaning item. The mayor is most of the time the safety director.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good deal. 38 now is this is also the powers of the mayor. This is part B of this, okay.
This is 4.05B, and what this does is that this gives the mayor a role or a vote on the appointments of all boards and commissions. That used to simply be just council would appoint boards and commissions, the 7 members of council. Now the mayor has a role in that and a vote on that.
Okay. Which is important, I think.
I think it's important because the mayor will work with those boards and commissions quite well, and then also many of the people that are interested come through the mayor's office saying, I'd be interested if an opening occurs.
Okay. Let's go to 39. Section .705 of Article 7 now of the Charter. This is regarding the Civil Service Commission.
Correct. And this came directly from our Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission sits, they meet monthly, 3 members, again, 3 residents of the city that do a great job. They made some amendments to their rules, and they noticed that, and we noticed that the charter was not consistent with the civil service rules. So they made this recommendation for consistency and to simply clean it up. And what what the city has on its website, there's a link to all these charter issues. And what we've done is put up there a red line version so you can see everything that's being removed and everything that's being added, which I think is great for the voters to look at, because part of this, which is a cleanup measure and a house cleaning measure, we were removing some items that simply didn't exist anymore. For example, all persons employed by any court of record. There is no court of record in the city of Twinsburg. There is no reason to have this in there. We cleaned that up.
So again, this is the things that were in the past, in years past,
when everything fell under the charter review, or under the civil service.
We have a couple that are coming that are a little more important. So let me get to these. Okay, let's go to 40 real quick. 7.12 of Article 7. This is the Department of Parks and Recs.
Really, this was just simply setting forth what they do. Parks and Rec has expanded significantly in the last 10 years, and they just wanted to give them a little more.
The rock the park, the pool, all that stuff involved.
Correct.
So, okay. Now, this one's pretty important here. This is issue 41, section 7A.01 of Article 7. Now, this is regarding changes to zoning, and I know this is always a hot button item with lots of different people, but what will this do?
Well, hopefully what this will do is clarify what I have been talking about earlier regarding the building height issue. Okay, whereas there was some confusion there of does this go to the ballot or does this not, hopefully the cleanup that the commission did on 41 will make that clear. Because if this passes, here's what would go to the ballot. Any changes to zoning classification on any piece of property, any changes to uses that are permitted on that property or prohibited on that property, and any change, if we are going to change from industrial to commercial, or any change within I-1, I-2, I-3 within that class.
So if you had this originally, the building height argument would be part of that, would be in there?
Well, what we would view that is that would not change the use, it would not change the zoning, so that would not have to go to the ballot. What we have found in the challenges that we have had with 7A01 as it's currently written, okay, is that some people would view 7A01 as anything in our zoning code must go to the ballot.
Right.
And the difficulty with that is our zoning code, for example, will tell developers you have to submit 9 plans and it must be on Mylar and it must be on 8.5 by 11 paper. If we change that to it can be done electronically, the argument is then that must go to the ballot.
Yeah, so even small items like that would have to go.
And we'd be taking everything to the ballot.
And elections are expensive.
They're expensive, and as we talked about earlier, you throw too many things on there that the voters aren't aware of, and they tune
you really
out.
confuse them. All right.
So that's what hopefully this will clean up.
Okay. This one's important also, 42, Section 8.01 of Article 8 now of the Charter regarding nominations, elections, and qualifications.
And interestingly enough, in the city of Twinsburg, only the mayor has a primary election. There's no primary election for council or anything else. It's just the mayor. And this was done probably 8 years ago, I'm guessing now. And what this would do is a proposal to repeal the mayoral primary.
So we'll get rid of that.
Get rid of that, and just the election would go to the general election.
And it's not a party thing anyhow.
It's nonpartisan anyway. So.
Okay. And lastly, issue 43 is section 12.04 of Article 12 regarding general provisions. And I don't know what this is.
What this is yes, and this is really just something that we think it's just due to come. Our charter has a number of provisions for notification that we have to post it in certain places, the public library, the post office, city hall, and we have to put it in a newspaper of general circulation. This would allow us to do those things electronically, either in a clearinghouse or on the city's website.
Okay, so this, exactly, things that weren't there way back when.
Right.
Okay. Hey, thanks so much for coming by, David.
Absolutely.
I hope this helps everybody as far as going and being an informed voter. You have no one to blame but yourself now, but great things that you brought to us, and it's been nice having you as a special guest. Thanks for coming by.
Glad to be here.